A layered lob, so it's going to be somewhat of a concave layer. We're working from shorter in the crown to gradually longer in the front within our layers and slightly shorter in the lengths. We want to start in the nape because that is kind of where all of the haircut builds from. So this is going to be kind of where the weight comes in and then everything just flows from the back forward. So we can work within 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 1, 2. So we're gonna position her hair down, or her head down, so that when we cut her hair and she puts her head up, it's nice and soft. Now I'm going to comb my next section into my previous. Add lots of tension, and with the edge of my blade, create my cutting line. So rather than creating a lot of big, open, airy space, I'm creating a much more blunt line here with the edge of my blade, so that as I go in and remove that length, I can really easily just go, about a ½ an inch above my fingers and know that my cutting line is right there. You're gonna be able to have symmetry from one side to the next because you are going in with your comb like parallel to your section. Your fingers are parallel to that. The more tension that you add, it's gonna bounce a little bit. So you wanna make sure you add the right amount of tension to just give you that perfect kind of set in. Same in the opposite side, just working from one side to the next to ensure that you're maintaining symmetry, right? So parallel, everything is parallel. Then once you find your lengths, your desired lengths, you anchor this hand that's holding the hair. You anchor it there and you keep your tension to make sure that you're maintaining exactly the right length that you want, and exactly, like, you can work really methodically and really thoughtfully through that process. And now this section, this section is going to be something that you can choose, that if you feel like it's more beneficial for you to set in the shape and the perimeter first and then go back through and add the layers, you absolutely can. And instead of going in through the front, again, you can do all of the lengths first. And then the thing that makes this haircut easy is that you're over directing everything into the center. So I can see my guide underneath, so I'm gonna travel past it, let it drop out, and begin to place those layers in all the way up until I run out of hair. It's really about how thick the hair is in your hand and how much you can control. So making sure that her head is square, lifting it to where we cut it, and looking that these ends are even and it's shorter in the center. So does it make a V shape like this? Even if there's highs and lows in it, is it generally going like this? And are there any parts that you feel like would be heavy and uneven? So it has this like really beautiful feathery finish using like slightly the flat of my blade. So we're gonna move into the sides, and just by easily dividing them and sectioning them into 1, 2 here on the sides, and we have that top already clipped up and out of the way, so we're not worried about this yet, but we're gonna create a little bit of a stronger shape. Then I bring everything in front of her shoulder, and obviously it's going to be a little bit more A-line than what I want. So I'll come in front of her and I'll turn that section from this to now square in front of her. From the very front, bringing it all of the way back, cutting it square. Now that's behind the shoulder. So we're going to bring it in front of the shoulder, that entire side section, and I already have a guide from the underneath, so I'm looking and feeling for the guide, and there's just a tiny little corner in the front to take off. Now on this side, you'll just be standing here and standing here, but you'll be working from the inside out and from the back and from the inside out this way. Taking out both of the sections in the top, and just letting those loose, combing them down. You can see that we have a little bit of the crown preserved right here. So what that means is if I section and I kind of resection from the top of the crown to behind the ear, we have not cut this corner of the crown, which is great because we've established a beautiful soft something underneath that's gonna support whatever we wanna do with this crown area. And different people have different ideas of how short they want that piece. And so when you talk to your client, you're gonna ask them kind of where they want this little piece of hair to hug their head, right? Do they want it here, like popping, or do they want it kind of more rounded or closer to the occipital, or more so just in the ends? I would love to do it a little bit shorter for you guys so you can see kind of what that looks like, and especially what it looks like when it comes to that short to long and what effect that'll give you. And now that is gonna be our shortest piece of all of the layers on the head because everything's gonna come from this piece of hair. All the way, directing all the way to the center, looking at your guide, watching the underneath fall out, and kind of like slowly dragging your hand that's holding the hair up and away as you're cutting those pieces. But you can see immediately that if she was to wear her hair more natural, she has a lot more lift here in the center. Next section, and really I can do this in 1, 2, 3 sections on each side, directing everything all the way over to the center, maintaining more length, much more length in these corners where you almost feel like it's a little bit of a disconnection. You wanna make sure that your blade is tilted to where the hair just kind of falls away. Because if it's too far in this way or too far out that way, it's not gonna cut the hair. But you're just adding in some layers to give you that beautiful root lift in the crown and working out from there. I'm gonna over direct this all of the way back. And what you can see in my cutting angle is that extreme kind of, if you can see this, let's see if you can see. Looking at my guide from behind, I'm just gonna follow that same line, but I'm preserving more of the lengths in the underneath, right? So I'm actually just over directing this back into my previous, but I am cutting it visually because it's a razor slightly longer than my previous section every single time. And that is increasing my length. So you can clearly see my guide right there and see how I'm kind of skimming across the top to connect all of the layers through, but getting a little bit longer than my previous section. She's loving the way she looks, and we let down this bang section and we decide with her how much do we want to connect this bang section to these layers? Does she want it to truly look like more of that one length lob with a little bit of layers into it? And I say we connect, and I'm just gonna nick off that last little corner there so that we can both have a look at what we're working with before we go in and add the layer to it. And I definitely want to continue that layer story because I don't want there to be this like awkward disconnection of it, but I also don't want this huge chunk of bangs either. And I say bangs, but she's not gonna have bangs. We're just continuing her layer story through the front and in a very minimal way. Not cutting into her hair, but just this surface layer kind of skimming across the top with her layers. She's got these like really pretty, like wispy layered bits that kind of come from all the way in the back of her head where it's like that kind of A-line layers, and it just gets longer and longer and longer, just so that we kind of continue that story from short to long, the top layers in through the bottom area, and just give her like a little bit of substantial kind of pieciness through those ends. And then once I lower it, again, just emphasizing what's already there and just making sure that there's like a connectivity from the top layer. And lastly, we can just take this mohawk section through the top, boom, lifting it all the way up and just giving it and kind of like over directing it all of the way back. Just dusting maybe some of those ends up and just making sure that you have a little bit of a connection, right? And added in a little bit of forward, backward, alternating curl patterns just through this top layer to give her some kind of definition so you could see those layers pop out.